Hello. So my topic today is that I'm going to use Vagrant on Ansible to demonstrate Ansible Tower HA from scratch. So the use case I have right now is I want to build a lab so that I can test Ansible Tower cluster. A lab that can be easily tear down and brought up at any time without going through configuration of each server every time. And I want this lab to be carried with me anywhere I go. It needs to be repeatable solution, and as much as possible all configuration are in code. So before we start, we basically need to make sure that we have Vagrant installed and all the plugins listed here are available. You've had a properly libvirt libraries installed. You need to have an internet access, and of course you have a full access to your local machine. So after that, what we're going to do is basically we're going to build a three VM, 3 clusters of Tower node plus one database server, and it's all running on Vagrant with on KVM, and it's driven by Ansible. So once the VM are built, Ansible Playbooks will kick in so that it will proceed to install Tower. So the environment as an outcome will have 3 cluster nodes for Tower and a 1 database node that the Tower will raise. And then later on I will demonstrate some of the Tower capabilities on cluster. So let's start doing this. So right now I am on the directory where I have my Vagrant file for this demonstration, and of course I have my playbooks and all the bootstrap scripts that I'll be needing. To go through the details, so this is the Vagrant file that I have. So I'll be creating, as I mentioned earlier, 3 cluster nodes per Tower and 1 DB node, and I define the IP address and the version of CentOS box that I'm going to use. I define that because I don't have to, it will be longer if I download the latest. So it will also once these VM are built, Vagrant will configure the IP address based on the options that I provided in Vagrant file, and then kick off the Ansible playbooks that I need to. So going through the VM needs to run. So going through the playbooks, so this is how how simple my playbooks are. It basically will run on all VM as long as it satisfies the condition. So what it does is basically add a repository, an Apple repository, because I'm using a CentOS installer. It will install Ansible. It will install wget on cluster node 1 because I need that so that I can download the Tower installation. And after that, it will move the Vagrant key and then start installing the cluster. So let's start that now. Vagrant status. So right now I don't have any well, I have installed the Vagrant boxes already, but it's shut off. So I'm going to kick it in to start it. So if you notice, all the VM here are shut down. So I'll kick it in. I will start it using this command, vagrant up -- provision. So provision is basically to reread the provisioner, which is the playbooks and the bootstrap that I need to for Vagrant to use. So once I kick that in, it will start bringing up those BM. So if you notice, the BM here are now up and running, and right now I would say it is booting, and some of those have booted already. And to verify that, I can actually vagrant SSH master. So while I'm typing that, the Playbooks kicks in already. So since this environment has, I already run the playbook initially, and this environment has some has the, what you call this, has the files and packages that needed. So Ansible will just make sure it's there, and if it's there, if the configuration or the application that I need is already in the VM, it will just ignore it and continue to the next play. So going back to Vagrant SSH, so usually, so this is cluster node 1 IP-addr. So that's the IP of the cluster node 1 as per defined in our Vagrant file. Cluster node 1 is .2. So usually during the installation, I usually tail the bar log messages so that I can see the progress of the installation. And -f. So as you can see here, the Ansible is actually kicking in, and I am expecting the same on cluster node 2. So if I sudo vagrant SSH cluster node 2.demo.com, and the password in that similar to this as well. So if I tail this, almost similar action is happening. So the tail -f/. So as you notice, it's almost the same, and I am expecting the same to cluster node 3 as well. Vagrant SSH cluster node 3 demo.com. Okay, sorry, I need to sudo it because my libvirt is actually loaded on the root. Cluster sudo so all the cluster nodes are doing the same thing because of the tower install playbook. It's kick up on cluster node 1 as per this condition that I have. So I say here that this script will only run on cluster node 1. So it's being kicked off, and because the inventory that I use is pointed to this 3 clusters, so that it will kick off. So if you if you check and verify what's going on db2 db node, so sudo vagrant ssh db node.dml.com, it's a different. I am expecting that this VM is not doing anything right now because of the play that is happening on the 3 clusters. So sudo -f sudo tail -f/4 log messages. So if you see that it's nothing, nothing is happening there. And if you look at the VM machine, all the most of this activity is actually most of the activity is actually happening on cluster node 1, because the playbook to install Tower was kicked off on cluster node 1. So this will take a little bit of time, so I'm going to post this recording and we'll come back later on once the installation is nearly done.